why you have that here. He said, I got a call from Mac McClarty, and Mac wanted to know what we knew about Mr. Tamraz and whether Mr. Tamraz should have a meeting with the president. I told Kyle almost immediately that we knew a lot about Mr. Tamraz and that no, he should not meet with the president. At that point, we chatted a bit more, and I think I suggested that the only basis for seeing the president or continuing any dealings with Mr. Tamraz would be if there had been a change in the policy that we in the interworking group, the oil group, had made some 9 months before in the June 1995 period, and that I could call Sheila Heslin and find out whether or not she was aware of any change, because we hadn't spoken of this for some time. And he said, all right. As I recall, he said, go ahead. And so I did.
Let's go back to that for a second. In either on the documents you saw that you were looking at that were on either a desk or a table in Mr. Simpson's office, and or in a discussion you had with Mr. Simpson, were dollar figures ever discussed? I
think they were. I think contributions by Mr. Tamraz that had been made or were to be made were mentioned.
Okay, what were those figures as you recall them?
I believe they were $200,000, and there was a discussion, I believe, of more, possibly $400,000.
If, in fact, he got a meeting with the president?
That was never stated. It was he was contemplating making a contribution.
Before you called Sheila Heslin, did Kyle Simpson tell you that Roger Tamraz had given $200,000 to the DNC, and if he was to get a meeting with the president, he would contribute another $400,000?
I don't recall that at all, sir.
Okay, if you, in your deposition, Mr. Carter, which I took from you, I asked you that question, and on page 4950 of your deposition, you responded, that is probably what he said. Now, does that refresh your recollection, sir, as to whether or not Mr. Simpson indicated to you that he had contributed $200,000 and he would contribute $400,000 if he got a meeting with the president?
It could be, Mr. Damlin. I don't have a distinct recollection of that. I do know that I gathered the information from that meeting that there was contributions made and to be made.
And the $200,000 figure, Mr. Carter, do you recall that being written down on some document?
It could have been. I'm not positive. It may have been on the same handwritten pad.
Let me put up Exhibit 1168. That's in your book also. There's a blow-up chart over there of this same exhibit. Mr. Carter, that is another memo that was prepared for Mr. Tamraz on March 28, 1996. Now, you were in Mr. Simpson's office on April 3, 1996. Let me ask you, and that document did not have a total on it, but when it is totaled up, it totals $205,000. Sir, is that the document that you saw in Mr. Simpson's office on his table or desk, because it does have Mr. Tamaraz's name on it, and it does total approximately $200,000?
No, sir.
You sure on that, sir?
Yes, sir. I've never seen that document.
Right before you called Ms. Heslin in April of 1996, what was your view of Roger Tamraz?
I had served on under Sheila. We were colleagues on the oil group, the interagency group. We all held the same view about Mr. Tamraz meeting with high government officials back in June of 1995. My view of him and of his having access to the president or any other high government officials was that he should not. It remained so in April of 96 and remains so today.
And you knew that Ms. Heslin shared that same view, did you not?
Absolutely. We jointly made that decision in the oil group.
And I guess the question I have is then, if you had such a negative opinion of Mr. Tamraz, and you know that Ms. Heslin shared that view, or maybe even a stronger view, why would you even bother? What would be any reason for you to call Ms. Heslin to ask her about Mr. Tamraz when you knew she shared your view?
She and I hadn't, she and I hadn't spoken on this matter on the oil pipeline issues for some time, and my only reason for calling her was to see if there had been some change that I wasn't aware of that she was that would warrant us not advising that he meet with the President.
Now, when I asked you during your deposition regarding the phone call you had with Ms. Heslin, the length of the phone call you had, you indicated to me 3 to 5 minutes. Is that correct?
I did say that.
And you heard Ms. Heslin testify yesterday indicating that that conversation was substantially longer. I believe she indicated that it was 25 minutes approximately.
I heard her say that.
Okay, as you heard her say that yesterday, and as you think back about the conversation that you had with her, do you still hold to the fact that the conversation was 3 to 5 minutes, or do you agree with Ms. Heslin that that conversation was more like 25 minutes?
I believe that Ms. Heslin's recollection would probably be correct. It is part of the complexity of trying to reconstruct this in my own mind that the telephone conversation seemed to be shorter.
Okay, so her recollection yesterday sort of refreshed your recollection that that conversation was longer.
If I may, Mr. Damlin, I've been trying to figure out that conversation since last March or so of '96 when the FBI came to my home to ask me about it. And so I am not sure whether it's from what I hear, what I've read, or what she said. But I will tell you that if she believed or can and feels that that telephone conversation lasted toward 20, 25 minutes, I feel confident it must have. It's just not my recollection.
Okay. And you have no notes of that conversation, correct?
I do not.
Okay, let me put up Exhibit 1179, which I'm sure if you were here yesterday, you know those are Ms. Heslin's notes of the conversation. And I'd like you, using those notes if you'd like, or just relating to us as best you recall, the conversation you had with Ms. Heslin, and relate that conversation in as much detail as possible.
I reached her, as I said, I think on the morning of April 4th, 1996. From my office to her office. And I told her that Roger Tamraz had reappeared, I think, or something to that effect, that we had gotten a call from Mac McClarty, who had asked us what we knew about Mr. Tamraz and whether the President should take a meeting with him. At that point, my recollection is that Sheila told me there was no change and that no meeting should occur. The policy was still the same.